I guess I had one question come up
Yeah.
recently about friendship,
Hmm.
um, because Aristotle seems pretty inconclusive about it in certain respects. Um,
Let's see.
and in the beginning of book 8 in the Ethics, when he starts talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
he has a, he has that comment about right. Well, everybody agrees that friendship is necessary for happiness, and it's in fact it's more necessary than most things because you could have most other things and you'd still not be happy without friends.
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, and but then he seems a little inconclusive about what it is, right? So he's talking about okay, well, it's uh, it's kind of like justice because it governs um, relationships with other people.
Mm.
So it's a virtue that has to do with another instead of something like temperance, which primarily has to do with the self. And but it seems better than justice too, because
Mm.
while civic leaders aim at justice between um, uh, their subjects, right? If people are friends, then you need less from
Mm-hmm.
them, right? Um, so let's see, what does he say? Yeah, so legislators most of all wish to encourage concord and expel discord as an enemy of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so states are maintained by friendship, and legislators are more zealous about it than justice. Um,
Oh, interesting.
so, um, my friends were talking about, or some of my colleagues were talking about it today and asking um, what what genus it properly belongs to. And I said, well, I mean,
Hmm.
I know that people talk about friendship like a virtue,
Mm-hmm.
but I said it seems to signify a relation.
That was gonna be my that's instinct. That's what I would have said.
It seems to signify a relation more than it does a virtue. Um,
It's a relation that's derived from or based on virtue, huh? Or,
so that's what my initial comment was. And
okay.
then one of my colleagues, who's a theology guy, he said, um, okay, but what about charity then, which is defined? Charity is the virtue, obviously, which is defined as friendship with God. So the genus of charity is friendship, and charity is a kind of virtue. So how do you reconcile those two things? And I said, okay, well, first let me ask you, what do you think about that? I think that's a great objection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yes, it does seem like friendship signifies a kind of relation immediately, but I know for a fact that charity is a virtue. I know for a fact charity is defined as friendship with God.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the genus of
Mm-hmm.
both is friendship and virtue, right? So charity is friendship, charity is a virtue.
Um, I'm. Hmm. I understand the definition, but I'm not. I don't know. Maybe I'll just pose the question: is whether or not it's adequate for this reason. This is what I'm thinking. Because this is a theological virtue, right?
Hmm.
So this is first, thereby this is a grace whereby a certain relation to God is established. No,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But that seems to put it back to a kind of relation, but one that's established by grace.
Which is a quality,
Mm-hmm.
grace itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, so that's what I said too. I said, well, yeah, charity is friendship with God, but it seems like it's friendship with it. You can say that it's friendship with God because God creates in you a new condition of soul, whereby you are able to be his friend in a true sense. Uh, so it first describes the reality of the soul, and then the new relation that can arise out of that action.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I think maybe regular friendship can be that sort of thing too. In order to be a friend, you have to have a certain quality of soul um, in relation to another person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a kind of friendliness about you, right? And in virtue of that friendliness in you and in another that's ordered towards each other, so you're describing the quality of soul, right? Then a relationship can be established from that you'd call friendship,
Okay.
right? So um, so I guess what I'm saying is with charity and friendship, you kind of have the same thing going on. It's just the names are applied in a different order. So
Mm-hmm.
charity talks about it names it's a grace, and it names that quality of soul, right? The quality of soul whereby you're able to be a friend of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you say that because of that, charity is friendship with God, right?
I see it, but that still seems to me like it seems like it might be playing a little loose with the terminology. I think precisely because you're talking about a grace and a relation to God, I'm not
Yeah.
it's not said in the same way that a quality like a certain natural quality of soul that allows me to be friends with someone else, right? Because I think, when I last asked you a question about like what category value fell into, and one of the things you helped me out with was that notion that, right, things are placed into the category according to what's most distinctive about them, right? Or what, and doesn't friendship designate first? We had this question too when we were talking, wherever Julian is, when we were talking about whether knowledge is a quality or a relation, right? And we said primarily knowledge is always a relation because it's always knowledge of something.
No, primarily it's always a quality.
Did we? Then I got that backwards. But whatever, right? Whatever was most distinctive about knowledge puts it in that category.
Yeah.
Isn't what's most distinctive about friendship the notion of relation? Or
That's what
is
I'm
it
so
or
that's what
is
I'm
it
saying.
the okay, but or is what's most distinctive about friendship the quality of soul?
No, I think like I said, with charity and friendship, you have two things about them that would make them part of two different categories: quality and relation.
Mm-hmm.
Charity primarily, I think, names the quality, which is the grace, whereby the soul is transformed so that it can have a kind of relationship to God.
How are we measuring priority here?
What do you mean?
You said primarily you're thinking of charity in a certain way. How do you prior in what way?
Just how it's said first. Like when people say charity, what do they signify first?
Okay.
That's
So,
the measure, right? So it's a logical priority,
okay.
right? Um, and so yeah, that's where I'm starting, I suppose. Um,
Okay. Yeah,
uh,
okay.
so but you see how like you see how it has a connection to the two genera, quality and relation.
Me or Phil? I think I'm following.
Okay.
Yeah, I see the yeah.
So I see that there's two things. You have quality in relation with charity, quality in relation with friendship. However, the priority in which one belongs to which one is reversed.
Mhm.
So with charity, you name the quality first, and then the relation afterwards, because I have charity in my soul. I'm not talking about a relation. I'm talking about a grace first, right?
Yeah.
And because of that grace, I'm able to be friends with God, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's typically the order that's understood when you're talking about charity, in at least as far as I can tell.
I think that's right.
In friendship,
Yeah,
I
that
think
seems
it's
right.
the reverse. I think with friendship, you're saying, I'm describing the relationship that exists between two persons, and that relationship exists only because of some quality of soul in them
Yeah.
that has a sort of affinity, right? And that quality of soul, because it's so intrinsically tied up to the relation itself, you could call friendliness or something, you know. So, but friendship first names a relation, and then secondarily talks about the quality whereby friendship exists.
Yeah, that seems right to me.
So are we just trying to distinguish charity and friendship, or what?
Yeah. So I guess one of my colleagues was just asking about friendship today.
About which category it would fall into.
Yeah, about the category, and I said, and he said, I mean, it's a virtue, right? So it's a quality. I said, well,
Yeah.
I have seen friendship listed among the virtues before, but I don't think it's primarily a quality. And I said, so I said, doesn't it signify a relation first?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I
When
don't
we
think
talk about what friendship is, it's a relationship between people.
What
right?
kind of colleagues do you have that you can have these sorts of discussions with, Jake?
It's a former TAC guy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even if you talk about the way you use that term, right? I don't know that you wouldn't list friendship as a virtue, right? If you were going to list it at all,
Well,
you would talk about
to be fair,
friendly.
I have
but-
seen friendship listed in
Yeah, I don't know that I would, but like I would say, friendliness would be if I was going to call anything.
Yeah, that's
virtue,
what I was
right?
thinking too.
Yeah.
I've seen that too. I mean, I've seen. What is it? Oh, okay.
Evan's got choppy internet, so he's in the private chat. He's with us in spirit.
Okay. All right.
So,
Yeah, and then one of my other colleagues, who's a theology guy, says he brought up an objection. He said, "Okay, well, isn't charity's a virtue, right?" I said, "Of course." And isn't it defined by? Isn't the definition friendship with God? I said, "Oh, that's a good point." So if charity is a virtue, and virtues are qualities, and charity is friendship with God, it seems like the genus of charity is both friendship and virtue. And I said, okay, so that's a good point. So I started thinking about the relationship between charity and friendship. So what do those two things signify? And it seems to me that the way that you kind of resolve that is by appealing to the order of the names. Like charity is friendship with God. There's no doubt about that. But
to Evan's point, though, it's as far as friendship being a virtue. I hope I'm articulating your position well enough, Evan. But as far as friendship being a virtue, we say rather that friendship follows from virtue, so that two people who are good can be friends. It seems like we had to be virtuous already in order to have real friendship.
To have friendship a virtue, for sure, yes.
Yeah.
It seems.
But I mean, we wouldn't really call a friendship of utility a virtue, would we? I think it'd go under qualities still, but I don't know if it's the kind of habit that's a virtue.
Evan, focus more on driving.
He's driving.
That's dedication, you know. That's dedication to Friday night. I thought I could boast with my airport.
That's right.
This is a
step up.
That's some next level stuff right there.